other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did like I went to the theater one day to see that, and then the next day to see Afterlife, Ghostbusters. Yep.
I'm ready.
So I remember Eternals because of Ghostbusters.
Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. As always, I'm Subject,
I hope
and
that audio made it in.
Me too.
we have Robert and
Hello.
the Day Ghost with us to talk
What's up?
about a Dracula comic that Robert currently has behind him. I think he's the only one of us that actually owns a copy, like a physical copy of it.
That's right.
Mhm.
Austin, this has kind of been something you're very into. I enjoy these, but I learned of these through you, and you kind of are the one that keeps up on these. How did you discover this? Just because you're a Dracula guy, or
How did I discover this? God, I have to go back like 2 years now, John.
You were like
So
12 then.
yeah, exactly. I was just a wee little thing. I think Transformers comes first, so I read that, and then I think there's an ad in Transformers like, "Hey, we're doing a Dracula book," and then I was like, "Oh, like I love what they're doing with Transformers. They're doing Dracula. I love Dracula. I'll check that out." And what made me more excited was that it was not just Dracula, but it was like a big like Universal monsters like moniker over it. So I was like, "Oh, it's not just going to be Dracula. Like they're going to do a bunch of them." And I was like, "Ah, I'll get in on the ground floor. I'll check these books out," and I've just been following them ever since.
yeah,
Because I think this comes out around the same time as like the first two GI Joe minis. I think it was like around there.
okay.
So it was like really when I was getting into just following Skybound month to month, apparently.
Yeah, I remember they had like complete control over your wallet.
Yeah, no, Captain Logan, Geek Evolution, said to me the other day, like, "Are you the editor of Skybound? Because literally half of their books are things that you love."
And they seem to
um,
be doing cool stuff across the board.
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, Robert Kirkman has a clue, apparently.
at least somebody does. Hayden
Yeah,
says
exactly.
he owns the book. He'll mail it to us real quick so that we can have it for the video. I appreciate that. We'll wait right here. Um, Robert, is this your first read? Because I know you bought this a while ago.
Yeah, I bought this last year. I found out about it through Austin. I hadn't heard of this before, and then it was like, oh, the hardcover is coming out, so I'll just get that for $20. That was the type of thing I could roll the dice on. So I did read this for the first time last year. It was definitely, I think it was before October. I don't remember now when I read it. So this is my second reading of it, and
Okay.
both times really like it. The first time I read it, though, I wasn't as familiar with the Universal movie, the classic. I had seen it once or twice, and now in the span of like 3 months, I've seen that movie like 5 times for various reasons, both in my personal life and for the channel. We've been doing a lot of Dracula stuff lately, so now I'm a lot more in tune with that movie and its take and how this comic adapts that in really cool and interesting ways. Because on my first reading, I was like, "Oh, this is the movie just better, I think, with a stronger story," and I still feel that way about it. But now I can pinpoint more the exact moments where they differ or expand upon it. But I think it's for people who don't know, for the Skybound Dracula comic, it's not as much a comic adaptation of like the book, just with the universal aesthetic. This is looking specifically at the script for the play that was used for the Universal movie. Is primarily concerned with adapting the movie version and that those portrayals of those characters, and I think does an excellent job.
And I think it's really interesting because we did, a commentary on that original film, what, like a month ago, two
Mm.
months
Has it been
ago,
that long?
and yeah, I feel like it's been a little bit.
It's a few
Um,
weeks.
I don't know.
Jesus.
I thought it was
Oh,
before
was it right?
Christmas,
No,
but
that's more so just me like losing track of time.
but I think this is like maybe the only Dracula adaptation that opens
It was
with,
2 weeks ago, Austin.
oh boy.
Oh, it is Austin that's losing track of time, not me.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know. Every day's been a week for me the last 2 weeks. um, no, I feel like this is like the only Dracula adaptation that completely skips over both the castle and the voyage, and we just open straight in England, which is the thing that, like we talked about in that commentary, most adaptations struggle with. So, like, I feel like it's kind of ballsy to be like, we're gonna like mainly focus on that part. And probably honestly a good idea for adapting this version because, like you
Mhm.
said, that is one of those versions that struggle with that.
Mhm. And yeah, it's probably the better for it. I really like their Renfield design. Just
He's
as
Jeff the Killer.
yeah,
Every time I see him, that's like all I can think of because he's got like that like pale white, and like sometimes he gets really close to the camera.
yeah. So while Robert is pulling that up, Austin, give us a brief plot summary of the Universal Monsters Dracula comic.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
so that's
every issue has a
gorgeous.
very beautiful title page. Although that's an unfortunate page separation because it's like right on the monster Dracula's face.
Oh yeah, yeah. It kind of cuts it off.
But yeah, Skybound's Dracula is kind of focused more so on Renfield. We open with Renfield in the asylum, and we really follow him and Mina, and we're all in England, and we have little flashes back to what happened before then, and it's very in line with that movie.
Mhm.
And it follows the movie's idea that it's Renfield that goes to the castle and brings Dracula along with him. So then we have, Jonathan Harker and Mina's father trying to figure out what to do with this Dracula fella, while Renfield is being crazy in the asylum, and Mina's friend Lucy dies, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And then, of course, kooky scientist Van Helsing gets involved, and then shenanigans incur, and we got to kill Dracula, who is like only really seen in passing in this book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the way because I just adore this art. The way it's very
Same.
abstract, but you can still follow it.
Hmm.
This is not like super esoteric, but like the Renfield look they go for is one that's very monstrous. What's interesting is the way this adapts the movie. It sticks very close to the script and just expands on certain areas, but it's not like a slave to it.
Yeah.
It does have its own take on a lot of these designs. It has an atmosphere all its own. It is mostly in black and white, which makes it a cool companion piece to the movie. But there's a lot of red in it, and just the use of color we get here, I think, is just gorgeous. I love it. Like,
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah.
Like
No, the art is great.
sequences like that are so good.
Hmm.
And I'm not typically a fan of this kind of art. Like I really don't like Arkham Asylum because I
Which
don't
this reminded me of.
dig that
Hmm.
art. But I think it works here where it didn't for me where it didn't work there. So Austin, what you're saying is this is the official prequel to the hit film Renfield, which also had Robert
Yes.
Kirkman
Yeah.
involved.
Exactly. This is one of the deleted scenes
Oh, okay.
when they go through their story.
Yeah,
I mean, they do recreate parts of that movie, so there you
they
go.
do.
Uh,
Yeah, this continues the move the Universal movies trend of Jonathan Harker is not a character in this. I think he's in maybe two scenes that I caught. Um,
he's in like a couple. He's in like quite a few scenes, but he's most like standing in the background and like being
yeah,
talked to. He's
he's
not
like,
like,
I'm here.
yeah,
Yeah, I think if this comic were an issue or two longer, you could have expanded his role a bit and like gotten more scenes with him and Mina. But what I think it does very smartly pacing wise is this comic doesn't pretend that like the Jonathan Mina relationship is the most interesting dynamic because it's just not, at least not in this version of the story. So like
mhm,
we learn about their relationship and we get a serviceable amount, but where I think this actually improves on movie Jonathan from the Universal version is all those scenes with him and the Doctor. Because Doctor Seward's role is expanded a lot, and in this story, both this and the Universal version, he's made to be Mina's father, and their conversations together are interesting. And then at the end, it's like, okay, clearly, Jonathan loves Mina, and that's kind of his stake in this whole thing. But it doesn't pretend that this version of Jonathan's the most interesting character. So he's there when he needs to be. He's there a serviceable amount, but the relationships and dynamics we do kind of beef up and focus on, like Renfield and Dr. Seward, I think is a really smart choice and really works for this take on the story.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool in that way, in that this version has like a very specific take, and it's cool to kind of see somebody go back to that as opposed to just doing their own like ground up take on Dracula. And with what you were saying with the designs too, um, look with Renfield specifically, I think it's interesting because it's very much its own thing, but there's places where I'm like, oh no, it is still that actor. I think kind of shining through, where I can see his face in it.
Yeah, there's a little bit, and of course, I don't know how much of that is if they just couldn't get permission, like from the estate of the family, to use a direct likeness. So that could
Hmm.
be a factor. I don't know, but it's mostly his take, but they're its own take. But you're right, like there are shots in this that are very close to the movie, and
Hmm.
where or you
Because
pieces where you can see, oh, they're looking at that as a reference for the art here.
yeah, exactly. Because I think you have both that with him and with Lugosi.
Mhm.
Because there's places where I'm like, oh, this looks like just their own Dracula, and then other places where it's very much Lugosi.
Yeah, I am surprised that you don't open this comic um, with a Demeter, because that's kind of the inciting incident for this take on the story. But I mean, we have characters talk about it, we flash back to it, so pacing wise, it
Yeah,
totally works.
and I really love how they do it, where it's Mina and Lucy talking, and like the walls behind them go like red, and it's like told in silhouette. It reminded me a lot of the Coppola film.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're on that. And this shot, the shadow of the captain
Hmm.
tied to the mast, that is lifted directly from the movie. There's a few
Yeah.
instances of that, but that's the one that I like first caught that really caught my eye
Hmm.
was, oh, that's just that shadow is directly from the movie, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, love
exactly.
the way they handle those moments.
yeah, and I really liked the Lucy and Mina dynamic, where Lucy is more interested in is kind of more brash. So I'm not getting this mixed up. I had to like cram for this, so it's all like mixed up in my head. Where Mina is more just like she wants answers,
Yeah,
um,
Hmm.
but they kind of balance each other out.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No, that's
pretty
another.
true. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Robert. No, no, go ahead.
It's pretty true to their dynamic, the way they're portrayed in that movie. It's just that in the movie, Lucy's only really a character in like one scene, and then she dies, and we just move on from it. Here, we get to spend a bit more time on that friendship and the shock value of what
Mhm.
happens to Lucy. That stuff's really well.
Yeah, exactly. And their dynamic reminds me of the Coppola film as well.
Mm.
I like that is another place where I feel like they're kind of looking at everything and not just the original film, but obviously that's the main inspiration.
That'll be interesting to rewatch tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I think my favorite thing about this comic is the way it sticks to the plot of the Universal movie. It just really beefs up those relationships and the drama. It
Hmm.
really knows where to focus on what works and what's interesting. And in the movie, it's kind of a comedy routine of because it's based on the script from a stage play. So Renfield just keeps walking to this room, interrupting conversations, like, get out of here, Renfield. And it's really funny and
Go
weird.
back to your cell.
And but his performance is so good. He's such a highlight of that movie. And here we spend a lot more time with him in his cell and characters going to visit him, like when Mina goes to see him. I think that's a great scene. And all the
Mhm.
way they handle Renfield, and you do get what's his name, Martin, from the movie. Like he is in here, he's just not played for laughs like he is in the movie. It feels a lot more organic, and all that stuff's just great.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's stuff from the movie that it kind of rolls past. There's a little bit of you probably should watch it before reading it. Like I would love to hear somebody who's never seen the film, like what their take on this would be. Because you get things like Van Helsing talks about that scene where he opens the mirror, and like
Mhm.
it's very much just kind of told in passing, which I don't have an issue with. Like I do think it works here, and actually reminds me of stuff. in those movies, like it's very much told in that kind of like, look over there, there's a dog running by.
Yeah. I got that vibe
And
too.
yeah, exactly. And I also just really like the choice that Dracula's not even really a character in this.
The art does such a good job at making Dracula a real presence in this comic, and the way characters talk about him, the way
Mhm.
characters have different perceptions of him. They do such a great job at
He looms over
making.
the entire thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a way that I think works in a comic that probably wouldn't work in the movie. Because in movies, we've seen countless different takes on Dracula, with him being more monstrous, more sympathetic, but he needs to be on screen. He needs to have dialogue. And in a comic, it feels so organic and natural, having all that stuff kind of be off screen and just talked about, or in the
When I
background, like you said.
Yeah, well, I feel like they looked at the movie and went, okay, what is like Lugosi's best stuff in this film? And it's like the piercing eyes. And they
Yeah,
went, like, that's the thing we're gonna focus on. There's so much imagery where you're just looking at like his eyes either like big over a scene or
Those
just a
horrible
close
yellow
up of
eyes.
them. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's they love that.
That looks great.
Yeah, it's
well, and of
beautiful.
course, Lugosi's performance is great. His
Mhm.
accent's great. His lines are great. But
The
of
way he
course,
can do this.
the way he can do this, that
Can't do that in the
Hungarian
comic.
double jointed nature. Yeah, but like his voice and stuff, you can't put that in the comics, so you don't feel like you're
No, of
losing
course.
anything.
Mhm. No, exactly. No, it's almost like he's like the binding of the comic. Like he's barely there, but he's what holds everything together, and his presence bleeds through every page.
He only gets one spoken line, and it's at the very end, and it's great.
Mhm.
It also really
Yeah,
nails that, like we talked about, I think, in that commentary, the plague aspect of it. It really feels like a plague has come to the city.
Mhm.
Um,
yeah. Like you get some of that kind of like Nosferatu of it all.
and
Yeah,
they
it
just
feels
straight up
like that.
say Nosferatu in this.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it feels like a plague, and it also feels like I mentioned during our commentary. It really captures that London Jack the Ripper vibe, like this mysterious man at a top, preying on these women. Like it's very evocative of some of that imagery, and they really capture that in this
Yeah,
comic.
yeah. I think we talked about this when we did the commentary of that film. I think we talked a little bit about Last Voyage of the Demeter and how we kind of see the ending differently. Where you're
Mm.
thinking it kind of like begs for more. Well, for me, like what I like about it is, he's Jack the Ripper. He disappears into the night at the end of it, and I feel like this is that final scene of that film, just as a book. Like this is what happens after that, where it's like this is that image that I had that like really stuck with me from that film.
I'm glad you
That's
brought that
cool. I
up.
can see that.
So we've established the timeline is the last voyage of the Demeter, this book, and then Renfield. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
Dracula
exactly.
cinematic universe.
Well, and before it is episode 1 of the BBC show, which is the
Um,
castle stuff.
and then after Renfield, you watch episodes 2 and 3.
No. Well, episode 2 is also the Demeter, so it'd be weird to watch that after.
Well, oh, okay. So then you watch episode 1, then you watch Last Voyage of the Demeter and episode 2 together, and then
Side
you,
by side, we splice the scenes together.
yeah. and then you read this book, and then you watch episode 3, and watch Renfield.
There you go.
Oh.
Austin's gonna do the Netflix Dracula with us. It's gonna be fun.
I
Oh
mean, I'll
God.
do it. I'll do it, but
Well,
it's
we'll
gonna
get there.
be. You're gonna
Miserable.
have a lot of me mostly ranting about how bad the show ends, and how much I love
I
Victor Van Helsing.
that could be a blind reaction for me because I still haven't
And
watched
me.
it. That could be fun.
Mhm. I do love their Van Helsing, but uh, ah,
Speaking of Van Helsing, I like their Van Helsing in this book. I don't know if you guys had this, but I think it's because I just watched Nosferatu recently. When he said Nosferatu, I
I
just read it in Willem Dafoe's voice.
I
Yeah.
was reading him in Defoe's voice. I was sorry. I was jumping back and forth between the original Universal film Van Helsing voice and Defoe because that version is like right there in my brain right now. But I did have a little bit of that.
And that's one design where he looks kind of like that actor, but he's got a big mustache. Again, he doesn't look exactly like he looks in the film. It's kind of their own
Yeah,
take.
Mhm.
no, exactly. They got that he was an old guy.
Yeah,
They
I
should have just paid for Hugh Jackman's likeness.
I would love it if they did that. If you had a really out of place crossbow wielding Hugh Jackman Van Helsing in this comic,
That'd be
it'd be
amazing.
wonderful.
Where's my
And
comic continuation of that movie? Come on,
and it
somebody
does
pick it up.
again, and it does
I'm
again.
actually surprised Van Helsing hasn't gotten a comic in this series. I assume that will
Right?
happen at some point.
Yeah, that could be cool. And one area where it does stick to the movie is we do get one reference to the brides, Dracula's brides, and just as part of the Renfield backstory when he's in the castle, and it works. It's a really cool image, but like the movie, you don't get we don't go back to the castle. We don't kill the brides. This is by no means trying to be like a definitive adaptation
Mhm.
of Dracula. It's just sticking to the movie, which is why what you said is interesting. Like, how would this play for somebody who hasn't seen the movie? One change they do that I think is smart, where either if this had more issues, you could have done the whole Lucy becomes a vampire and we got to deal with her first. Like that could have been really cool in this comic, but
Mhm.
they what we get instead is I think just as smart where there's one weird scene in the movie where it's like, look, Lucy, she's a vampire or she's a ghost or something. She's walking around and we never resolve it. It's just dropped from that movie entirely. So this comic does the wise choice of like, okay, she's just dead. We're not. She's
But
dead.
Yeah,
Robert,
we
Moving
just
she
on.
got that.
she
We're not
wasn't a
going to do this
vampire. She went back to her home planet.
exactly.
Yeah, no,
No, I
I
didn't
agree
mind
with
that.
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, I didn't mind that because it's just like, what is that going to add? You've only got 4 issues. So let's talk about that. Do you think this needed another issue? Did any of the kind of because there's definitely some jumps in
Mhm.
time between at least a few issues. Did any of that throw you guys off, or were you just kind of like rolling with it?
For me, it's a case where I wouldn't have minded one or two more issues because, like I said, there
Mhm.
are areas you could have expanded on. But for what we got, I am more than satisfied. I think it's really smart the way it uses the 4 issues. So what we get, I think, is great. So no complaints.
Yeah, I agree. I do think moving forward, I hope that they're not like always limited to 4 issues. I do think the creature from the Black Lagoon one I like a lot, but I do think it kind of resolves a little quick by the end. But
I had
like I
that
would
too.
like to see them jump around with varying lengths. But I think for this, like Robert said, I would have been fine with more. But I think it's really good.
And then
Yeah,
Austin, this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
yeah, I didn't like Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives as much as Austin did. I did like it, but I did have the same issue where I was left wanting more or feeling it was kind of rushed. Where either I want a sequel to it, or I wish it was just more than 4 issues. Like so far, I've read 2 of these, and this one I think uses its 4 issues really well. And with the creature one, while I did like it, I was left wanting a bit.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
of
that's
course, I
fair.
haven't read
I had that with
Frankenstein
that
yet,
too.
and I'll see how Mummy goes. Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how that reads on a reread when we get there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then
and
Austin, this
Frankenstein, I
is
think. Oh, sorry.
no. Go
Go ahead,
ahead with the
John.
Frankenstein. That's on
No, I was just
trial.
gonna say. I think Frankenstein probably even more than this. Like, I don't know if anyone can come into that having not read
Mm.
the or seen the movie.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So that one is also firmly like universal Frankenstein canon.
It is, but unlike this, it's not retelling the story. It's doing like the seeds in between,
Mhm.
um, like the drops in the rain.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about this one is it's the only one that is kind of just adapting the movie, or at least part of the movie. Um,
Hmm.
which I kind of like. I don't know if I'd want all of these to just be like, here's the movie, but like able to go a little further because we're in 2025 or 2023, whatever.
It does
Yeah,
seem
it's
like that's what they're doing for the Mummy, but that is just like
The
objectively the
correct
correct choice for
choice.
the Mummy.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say, Robert? It seems like what?
No, I was on the same page as you. Where with the Mummy, it
Oh,
seemed like it was gonna stick to the movie, just improve on it, like
yeah, and I
this,
do
which I think
like
would be great.
Yeah, exactly. And I do like that it's not like, okay, we did Dracula, now we have to do that for Frankenstein and for the Wolfman and Invisible Man. Like, I do like that they're just going, hey, do you want to write a book about this universal monster? Do whatever you want. Like, you can do that, or Creature from the Black Lagoons, like a decades later sequel.
Yeah. So Austin, let me ask you this because I know you're more
Mhm.
hit and miss on Tinian. Um, do you think
Uh,
he's good in this, or do you think this
I
is
don't
good but
have
could have been better
that
with a
as
different writer?
much. So I don't have that as much. Tinian's a writer I hadn't really experienced much, but I'd always heard people say that they were mixed on him and thought he was just kind of meh. Um, and then I'm trying to think. I think I've only really read this and The Nice House on the Lake, which is a book I like even more than this.
But he's in
That's really
Justice, isn't
great.
he?
Sorry, what, John?
He's also the Injustice guy, isn't he?
No, that's Tom Taylor.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I don't really have that as much with Tinian, but I have heard that from people. So
Okay.
It's the classic mirror scene. And that
yeah,
shot looks pretty close to the movie version. Just, but you get Van Helsing with his mustache. Cool little moment.
yeah, that's great.
And like shots like this, like at Carfax Abbey, it's just
That
so
just looks
beautiful.
so
There's a
good.
Oh,
painting.
it's
It's just
the like Gothic
dripping with that
architecture of
gothic
that looks so good.
atmosphere.
Mhm.
Give me a bloodboard comic that looks like this. Would be
And then shots
amazing.
like that are just like a perfect reflection of the movie with that long staircase. They do work in some of that iconography from the Universal
Yeah, they
movies.
got Dracula killing Renfield with a Austin Powers style judo chop.
Or
But
Renfield.
But before we get to the ending, though, a big theme I wanted to kind of discuss that this leads
Mhm.
into. One thing a lot of Dracula adaptations run into, or I should say, have different takes on in terms of changing and adding to the book, is the why now question. Why is Dracula leaving Transylvania? Why is he coming to London? Like, what's his motivation? A lot of versions, like the Coppola movie, have the love story angle, with the reincarnated, lost love, all that stuff. This one has an interesting setup with Renfield, where he talks about how well our people, our civilized, more you could say quote unquote modern people, we don't have the old faith anymore. We're losing that, and now Dracula feels he can come here. That's an interesting theme. I think this
Mhm.
comic explores that felt very Exorcist to me, with
Yeah.
like and the position of like Dr. Seward being a man of science and not believing in supernatural stuff reminds me of like like the atheist characters in The Exorcist and those types of movies. It's faith
Yeah.
versus science and everything in between. I really love the way this comic handles all that.
Yeah, and they really make a point in this that Van Helsing is like right in the middle on that line of both being a doctor and a shaman, as they call him.
Um, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the wolf scenes because they look
Mhm.
awesome, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
obviously a thing in the movie where she's like, "Yeah, there's a dog over there."
yep.
Yeah, we got to see the wolf and the bat.
Because that's something I often forget about. Because I'm not as big of a Dracula guy as like you are, Austin. I think I like vampires, but I wouldn't say Dracula's my favorite vampire story. Um, yeah, see that just looks so cool. So I often forget that he could turn into a wolf. I just always go to bats.
Well, that's because that's like the big like pop culture thing. Like in the book, he can turn into like mist. Like
Yeah, he
there's
can turn
quite
into
a few
lots of stuff.
forms.
I knew about
Yeah,
the mist thing because Buffy has
and
that.
like rats. Oh, okay. Master.
Yeah,
And this, I
Renfield is
think,
not
adds a
having a good
really
time in this book.
And one thing I really love about the story though is this battle for Renfield's soul, where
Mhm.
in the movies, including the Universal one, it feels like he's just kind of changing from scene to scene, where he's like, Dracula, my master, I want to be evil, I want to be vampire, I want to live forever, and then but now I'm still good and I want to help Mina and stuff. I think some adaptations handle that stuff better than others, and this I think has a great. It just you really get in the meat of it, of
Mhm.
how tortured this guy is. He has this wonderful speech where he talks about like, oh, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an adventurer. I wanted to go to India
And
and
then he
going to
took an arrow to the
Transylvania.
knee.
And going to Transylvania, this was my adventure. And I was gonna see Count Dracula, and oh, that didn't work out. And now I'm disgusting and eating bugs, and maybe I may have gone too far at a few places. I think that stuff's great.
Yeah, absolutely. What was I gonna say with that? Da 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 da.
While you're thinking about that, because we just had Nosferatu, and there's a lot of talk, and I think you and I are on the same page, Austin. Where that's kind of become a top tier Dracula film. In terms of adaptations of just the book, would you say this is kind of a definitive one? Like you would recommend this to people, or is it just like if you like that Bela Lugosi movie, this is must read, but if you don't like that, this isn't gonna like be for you.
I mean, if you don't like it, it might also improve stuff that you don't like about it. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard to say definitive because it's like so much just a piece of that film where like it's more of an extension. Um, and it's only adapting like 1/3 of the book. Um, but no, this is definitely one I would recommend. But what I was gonna say with Renfield, with what you were saying, um, I really like the use of color with him because we talked about like he's got like the white thing. The only time he ever has regular skin is when he's talking to Mina, and she like wipes down his arm, and it is regular for a second, and that's kind of showing that they have like a little bit of a connection now. And then obviously we use that coloring to show that she's under Dracula's spell. I think all that's like dynamite.
Yeah, and this does a really good job selling how Mina is the one who kind of reaches him or gets him to
Hmm.
rethink his choices and factors into the ending where he says later, she's the only person who was nice to me.
Mhm.
And how that really affects him, and it really works. And I also like the way, though, in that again, this for me, this isn't trying to be a definitive Dracula. If I'm just going to rank this with other adaptations, it's got a good shot at making my top five. I do really love this.
Hmm.
But it is nice the way they do weave in just a few little nods to the book, like Lucy's suitors are mentioned. I mean, we don't get to meet them, but that's still nice. And then Quincy's mentioned. Quincy, friend of Jonathan Harker in this book. Quincy's name dropped a couple times, so that's nice. Even though he's not a character, it's cool to get that little reference.
Mhm. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Robert, it would be really cool because we watched The Hammer Dracula a few weeks ago that same night. It'd be cool if somebody could do this with some of that stuff.
Yeah, it would be hard to approach this the same way because in some ways this actually does remind me more of the Hammer one than the Universal one, and that in the Hammer one he is more of a presence. You don't get a lot of dialogue or screen time for him, so
Mhm.
the way Dracula's portrayed in that film is actually very close to this, where he's just talked about and we don't see him a whole lot. So I don't really know how I would approach it, but I'd be down for it because
That's
Hammer has
one you
such a
might
cool
have to do
aesthetic.
just like a sequel, but it's only maybe like only a sequel to that first movie, kind of Halloween 2018. I don't
Hmm?
know what happens in some of those other sequels, but
I know he goes to. I know he's in the 70s at some point. Looking forward to finally watching that.
I thought you were gonna say he went to space.
I wish
Where's the
that should be a
Dracula in
comic.
space movie, Austin?
It's one of the Hammer sequels, and Peter Cushing has like a cross lightsaber.
Oh, does somebody yell traitor?
No, that's a reverse cross lightsaber. He has it so it's at the top.
What? What does that have to
I
do with somebody yelling traitor?
Because that's the Kylo. Oh no, that's not Kylo Ren who says that. That's the stupid stormtrooper.
Stormtrooper.
I was thinking it was
Actually,
Kylo
I
Ren.
think
There's
they both say it
no. I think Kylo Ren.
because
Kylo Ren yells something.
he
no,
says
because
traitor at the end.
yeah, he says traitor at the end too when he's facing down.
Okay, so I'm right. See, I was thinking it was that scene, but it's been so long since I've actually seen the movie, and like since I've seen that, I've only seen edited clips where they edit the Black Klansman scream over that scene. So it's like, I don't know.
No, that's fair. It's also been a while, so I remember just the memes of that stormtrooper going traitor.
That's right. Yeah. Anyways,
Anyway, side
Anyways,
tangent about Star Wars off side. Austin, Robert, anything else that you guys want to bring up, or any other talking points we need to hit?
back to kind of what I mentioned earlier. I think what hit me the first time I read this was some Exorcist parallels. Like it never occurred to me that the Exorcist, the character that Max von Sydow plays, was probably
Mhm.
inspired by Van Helsing, and I don't think I ever made that connection until reading this and how this book approaches it, and how some of the other adaptations do of Van Helsing being, this middle ground between science and faith, and being this older guy that most people kind of don't take seriously. I was like, oh yeah, and with Nosferatu, there was a lot of discussion of like, oh, this is pulling a lot from Exorcist with like the demon possession, like kind of the
Mhm.
body horror element is very Exorcist. And it's just these two completely separate works of fiction, so separated by so many years, are just kind of still feeding each other through adaptations in really interesting ways. And I got a lot of that in this.
Yeah, I mean, Van Helsing is such just like an archetype in horror. Like, even you go to like Halloween, and Dr. Loomis is Van Helsing in that story too.
Mhm.
Well, and to go to Austin's favorite thing, Buffy. Giles is
Oh
very
yeah.
Van Helsing esque character uh, for that kind of vampire story.
There you go.
And I only brought that up
And
because I know Austin knows who Giles is.
Yeah, he's the bookman.
Yeah.
And I think the way this comic handles the climax of the story, the movie version specifically, sticks very closely to it. Like Renfield, Dracula, they have the same fates that they have in the movie. They're just beefed up a bit through imagery and making the heart of the story Renfield's relationship with the Dr. Seward. I think was a really inspired choice. It is the thing that has most stuck with me from this comic. Like the ending, I think is wonderful. Of like this,
Mhm.
you get kind of a redemption story for Renfield and that heart to heart with him and the Doctor. I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, that fellow Renfield is dead on the floor. Anyways, let's go kill Dracula.
Yeah, like
So
the movie has that vibe where it's like I love like the movie's great, but I don't know what I'm supposed to think of scenes like that where Renfield's dead now. Okay, like was he tragic? Was he just like I don't know how I'm supposed to feel
he's
about him.
dead,
This
Robert.
comic has some, but he's dead now.
Um,
But this comic has a very specific take on him and
so
his
let me
story
ask you
that
guys this, because issue 4 was kind of the biggest casualty of me having to cram this. Do they reveal what happened to Mina? Because I may have missed it.
Yeah,
there's one
she's
panel.
okay. They
It's
do like,
just like the movie.
yeah, exactly. But I do
It's that
like
old.
that. Yeah, no, exactly, Robert. It's that old thing where it's like, now the story's done. Bye.
It's like King Kong when you get to the end with Anne, and then don't worry, Jack's there, and he's hugging her, and don't think about the decades of trauma and PTSD. They're fine. They're fine. Don't think about it. It's very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Well, seeing Renfield die broke her out of her spell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get one panel that makes it clear, like, okay, her vampirism is going away.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
that's good.
And her
Lighter
coffin
wound,
was empty.
and her coffin is empty.
Mhm.
There's still time.
Yeah, exactly. And then Dracula got to have his one line, as you said.
Yeah, great.
Did you read that in a Lugosi voice, or did you just have like a different voice in your head?
I had more of like a hissing kind of demon voice when I
Oh,
read that. I
okay.
wasn't really thinking Lugosi, but I'd love to hear him deliver that line because in the movie he's just like, ugh. He doesn't get to say anything. He just
That's how he.
dies.
That's how he would deliver it. Just like, Van Damme."
I want to see the world where he's kind of like Harrison Ford with Star Wars, like a press person asks him about Van Helsing. He's like, "What the fuck is a Van Helsing?"
I mean, just go watch Ed Wood.
Yeah, you'll kind of get that
Not exactly, but kind of.
there. Yeah.
All right, Austin. Your turn. Is there any other final thoughts or anything else that you feel we haven't discussed?
No, I recommend this. If you haven't read it, go read it. And if you like it, check out their other books because I'm digging them.
How would
Yeah,
you
I've still
rank
got to read
these?
Frankenstein.
Yeah, these three Skybound Universal comics you've gotten. How would you rank these three so far?
So, as I was reading them month to month, I felt like each one was kind of better than the last, but also with Creature from the Black Lagoon having a weaker ending that probably knocks it down below Dracula. So it'd probably be Frankenstein, Dracula, Creature.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I do
Well,
like all of them.
and that's interesting because I think that's where I'd put the movies too. Like if I'm ranking them, like I like Frankenstein over Dracula. I don't. The tricky part is I'm not sold on Dracula being over Creature. Like I'd go back and forth on that one.
I'd put Creature over Dracula if we're just talking the movies.
Yeah, Creature's my third favorite Universal film, Universal monster film.
You know, just your Universal film. In 100
exactly.
years, that they haven't managed to top that.
They haven't managed to top Bride,
It's like Creature
Invisible
and then the
Man,
Thing.
and
John
Creature.
Carpenter's
Yeah,
The Thing.
yeah, exactly. We could have had John Carpenter's Creature. It would have been the greatest thing ever.
I know.
But
Yeah.
I need it.
make that into a
Can we
comic,
have
Skyband, yeah, bastards.
Can we have John
No.
Carpenter's Creature?
That script probably exists somewhere. Ask Universal for the script and make it a comic.
It's fine.
Can we have John
James
Carpenter's Creature from the Black Lagoon meet John Carpenter's Sonic?
Of course.
Can I
Hey,
just
that-
have every John Carpenter film that I wish got made like condensed into one 4-issue comic where they cross over, like his Creature, his Sonic, his Dead Space, his Godzilla, that Shane Black Vietnam zombie movie. Just like
That
all
one
of
I
this.
would
Just...
love to see.
That's
right.
like the big one, yeah.
All right, that has been our review of Skybound's Dracula. We'll get together at some point and tackle the next one. Creature from the Black Lagoon lives or return or something.
Survives.
Yeah. Rises. But stick around. At least me and Robert are going to play some of the thing. Austin, you're more than welcome to stick around. Hopefully, we're finishing it tonight. Hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah, if we don't finish it tonight, we'll definitely finish it next week.
Yeah, I feel like we got to get close to the end. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll be back in 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long break everyone needs. Till then.
See